always late when it comes to talking about things I've enjoyed as far as yearly favorites go. I talked about my 2020 beauty favorites on the Beauty Breakdown in 2021, and I'm talking about some of my favorite books from 2020 in 2021. But I would be remiss not to talk about some of my favorite reads for the year 2020. Now, 2020 was definitely the year of reading for me because of the lockdowns and everything like that. I had a lot more time to just sit and read. These are books that I easily gave 5 stars on my Goodreads, and these were the type of books that literally left me with the worst book hangovers of my life. And as a quick little reminder, don't forget to subscribe if you like this channel, as well as hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I upload. And if you wouldn't mind to just give this video a like, it only takes a second and it helps me out a ton in the algorithm. Also, really quickly, I know I'm gonna get asked what's on my lips. It's from Blessed Moon, the Fluffy Lip Tint in Cheeze. So, without much further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about my top 5 favorite reads from the year 2020. This first book I'm gonna talk about is very popular and for very good reason. It is genuinely, I think, one of my favorite books of all time, and that is The Song of Achilles. Madeline Miller is a new author for me, obviously, and I just love the way she writes. She writes so beautifully and really wraps you up in the world that she's placing you in. This book takes place through the eyes of Patroclus, who is the legendary warrior Achilles' loyal companion and also lifetime lover. This is just overall a really good book. I think anyone would like this book. I'm a big fan of any books that take place during this time period, during like the Peloponnesian War, the Trojan War, ancient Greece. She does a really good job of interpreting the possibility of their relationship, because after I read this book, I did do a little research on like Patroclus and Achilles to kind of see what their story was or how closely the Song of Achilles followed history. And while it's not known if they were just really, really close or if they were actually lovers, I like this because it really did a good job, I think, of painting one perspective of it, or painting one narrative that it possibly could have been. There's obviously some fictional parts to this. She does take some of her own creative liberty in this, but I actually think it builds the story and makes it even better. So I am actually currently reading Circe, because this is another one of her books, and I really can't wait for her to come out with more books, because so far I really like this one. I think I definitely like The Song of Achilles better so far. I'll have to figure out once I'm done reading this one. I'm pretty far into this one, but yeah, she's just honestly an author that I can't wait to follow more of her books. This has to be one of the longest books I've read in a very, very long time. I think the last time I read a book this long was maybe when I read Harry Potter, and it is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Now, this is actually the first Stephen King book I've ever read, and don't ask me why I chose this one. I just saw it on Goodreads and thought it was really interesting, and again, I like historical based books or books based on history, so I thought this was really cool because it had to do with the JFK assassination, which I think there's a lot of lore around that event and kind of what happened. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not realize how long of a book this was. This is, holy moly. This thing's 842 pages long. I mean, you could weightlift with this book and actually build some biceps. It's a bicep book. I actually rented this first on Libby, and thank God I did, because if I think I actually knew how long this was gonna be, I probably would have been intimidated to read it. So I read it on my Kindle and was so wrapped up in the story that I didn't even realize how long it was. That's how good this book is. I feel like the pacing's really nice. I have really turned into somewhat of a Stephen King fan from this book alone. This again is going to be, I think, one of my favorite books of all time, and it's a book I'm going to have to revisit again, because I feel like if I read this a second or third time, I'll get different details from it. This is about a man who goes, I guess, back in time to try to prevent the assassination of JFK, because as it says through the book, there's like a butterfly effect. If you were to prevent the assassination of JFK, you'd prevent all these other catastrophes that were to happen after it, like the Vietnam War and all of starvation and all of these other types of things. And so along the way, of course, he starts to forge his own life. Back in the 50s. It's kind of like eating an elephant one bite at a time with this book, but if you're looking into reading this book, I would definitely recommend it. And maybe read the Kindle version of it, because I'm not gonna lie, like I said, this is probably kind of hefty on the wrist. The only reason that I have the physical copy is because I like the book so much, I had to have the physical copy, so I bought a used copy. That's what this is, but I did read it on my Kindle, which made it a lot easier. Now the next book I actually don't have a physical copy of because my copy is actually with my sister right now who's reading it, and this is truly the book that kicked me back into reading in 2020, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing. Now I found it on Amazon. I think at the time is one of the best selling books on Amazon. It was also part of like Reese Witherspoon's book club. The book is about Kaya, who is kind of an outcast, and she lives in the marshes of North Carolina, and kind of talks about her interactions with the people outside the marsh, how she interacts with her environment, self-sustains, how she takes care of herself and educates herself. What really kept me reading was not only the plot, because it was really interesting, kept it moving, because it is also like a mystery book. Like there's a crime that happens in the book, or murder, that you're kind of reading through to figure out what actually happens. But it's also so beautifully and descriptively written. And again, this was a book that it was just literally what I consider a page turner. I could not put it down. I read it in one session, and it was actually a book I lent to my grandma as well, who also likes reading, and she even said that that was one of her favorite books as well. So it's definitely good for people of all ages, I guess you could say. I really like seeing like that heroine trope of a girl who's taking care of herself, but also there's a bit of romance. She falls in love with the book, and there's a bit of a tumultuous period with that as well. And then she's going through this whole like murder mystery thing as well. So it's got a little bit of everything for everyone. Now the next book that was one of my favorites in 2020 is one that's been out for a while, so much so that they have a movie that's already been out for a couple of years now, and that is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And I hadn't read this book. This was the first time I have ever picked up a book from Jojo Moyes. I know she has a ton of books that are super popular that I see people recommend a lot, but this is my first introduction to her writing, and she just makes the characters so charming in this book. Like, you want to root for everyone. I didn't know what this was about. Like, I had no idea how it was going to end, and I won't ruin it for those of you guys who are going to read it or maybe like watch the movie, but I was bawling at the end of this book because it just really gets you. And so I also have her other books, which I'm looking forward to read. These are like my TBRs for 2021. The After You and Still Me. I picked all of these up, by the way, as used copies. I got like really lucky. I found these two at my local Goodwill, and then I found this one online that was used. So yay for used books, because it introduced me to one of my favorites for 2020. The next book I also don't have a physical copy of because I rented it on Libby and read it on my Kindle, and that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. So I actually read this based off a recommendation from my sister as well. I read it during the month of October, so it was super appropriate for me to read it during that time. And again, this was the ultimate page turner. I could not put it down. I had no idea, honestly, where the plot was going. And I don't want to ruin it too much, but I do have to say, again, I really, really love the character development in the book. Like, it's one of those books, as you're reading, you're like, oh my gosh, this character is my favorite. I love this character. And then you start reading some more, you're like, actually I like this other character. And you're like, I don't care for this other one. And then they start to like redeem themselves. So there's a lot of like character redemption in the book, as well as like some character flaws that you start to see. So there was a lot of complexity with all of that that was really interesting to keep up with. Alongside of that, there is a so-called vampire terrorizing this small neighborhood, so I'm all about, again, like the heroines going in and trying to solve the mystery themselves. And of course, you know, it's like one of those situations where, you know, the husbands, the clumsy husbands, are believing their wives. They're supposed to be complacent type of wives, and of course, they're not. It was so quirky. I loved it. I love horror books, and I love mystery/thriller books. So this was right up my alley. And I definitely want to check out more of Grady Hendrix's books. I've heard My Best Friend's Exorcism isn't quite as good, but if you guys have read any of his other books, let me know if they're up to snuff. I almost want to buy like a physical copy of the book because I could see myself possibly rereading it in the future or wanting to loan it out to friends or family. Do you guys do that? I'm curious because, like I said, I'm new to this whole booktube thing. When you like a book and maybe you read it on digital Kindle or on Libby or something like that, do you go out and buy the book after? Or do you just like not? Anyways guys, so those were my top 5 reads for 2020, the top 5 books that I'd recommend if you guys are looking for any like my ultimate 5-star recommendations. These are books that really knocked it out of the park for me. I'll go ahead and link them down below if you guys want to check them out, as well as my Goodreads if you guys want to see some of the other books that I've been reading or keep up with whatever else I'm currently reading. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!